Today began day one of the murder trial of Brendan Banfield. Now, it's days like this that I wish that I were a classic true crime fan. This case is brand spanking new to me. I saw that it was covered by everyone all over the place, all the media outlets, several YouTube channels. I was like, was ist das? I recognize that judge. Oh, but as I dug into it, just the colder and colder it became. I'm hooked. Let's get into day one. This video contains mature themes and discussions intended only for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Messed up on the old button pushes there. You know, that's what you get when you come to an amateur YouTube true crime guy. You don't get the professional stuff. I don't have a person to push my buttons, to turn my knobs, to flip my levers. I have to do it all myself. Anyway, welcome back. Thank you for joining me for another true crime conversation. My name is Gavin. Thanks for being here. Wherever it is that you're joining from, I am so glad that you are. I know that there are people down the street, and I know that there are people around the world that tune in, and I just love that. Please put where you're tuning in from in the chat. I just love to know where you guys are coming in from. Special shout out to whoever is the farthest away. I'm going to guess Brazil, maybe Australia today. We'll see what happens. Guys, we are talking about the murder of Christine Banfield. She is victim number one. Victim number two is Joseph Ryan. We have precious little information about Mr. Ryan, but Christine and Joe, as they refer to him in the trial, they were not connected at all. Joe was a stranger to Christine, and yet, not through fate, not through circumstances that the universe, I don't know, mixed together in some crazy recipe to get these two kids together. No, that's not what happened. What happened was, according to prosecutors and police, two people, Brendan Banfield, Christine's husband, and Juliana, how do we say it? Magalhaes? I don't speak Portuguese, I'm sorry. Two people who were connected. They were, shall we say, congressionally connected. They were lovers, in Congress united. These two kids decided, the best course of action so that we can be together, let's go ahead and kill her. This is according to prosecutors, right? This is what's alleged. Now, Juliana has already pleaded guilty, so we don't have to say alleged with her. But Brendan is on trial. But these two kids are like, let's just go ahead and off this woman. And I don't know how we should do it. We'll bring in a stranger. Bring in a stranger. And that is what we believe they did. So, I mean, where do we go from here? I know where we go. We go to the reports. Now, I was going to get some video for you guys from testimony. Audio was terrible. Plus, none of the video was really ready by the time I started. So I wasn't able to do it. But I got a couple of articles that I want to read for you. Let's see. The first one I didn't bring up. Let me see if I can find that real quick. There we go. Okie dokie. Join me over at Acrobat, will you? I need to hide this. You guys can't see it, but I can. Okay. Are we all on the same page? We are. This is brought to us by CNN.com. This was maybe a couple hours ago as it was written, and it gives us a little primer on the case. And then what we're going to go to is some of these live updates that happened throughout the day. The details that were brought into court today are just incredible how, if he did it, I'm presuming him guilty, wink, wink, nod, nod, or not guilty. Whoa, wow, Freudian slip. I'm presuming him not guilty, wink, wink, nod, nod. But the details of this case are just absolutely disturbing. Let's begin at CNN. Lauren Del Valle wrote this, and this was written a couple hours ago. Headline: Brendan Banfield trial. Au pair who had an affair with defendant testifies on alleged killings of his wife and another man. Okay, the au pair who was having an affair with Brendan Banfield when he allegedly killed his wife and another man in February 2023 as part of an elaborate scheme has taken the stand to testify on the first day of Banfield's double murder trial. Let me just pause here for a second, okay? If you're new here, you may have not heard this before, but I have what I call Gavin's iron law of criminal mastermindery, and it is this. If you believe you have what it takes to be a criminal mastermind, that is the evidence that proves you do not have what it takes to be a criminal mastermind. They did, according to prosecutors, engage in an elaborate conspiracy, an elaborate scheme, as Ms. Del Valle writes, to get away with murder. Okay? They did not do a good job. They just didn't do a good job. But anyway, okay. They're criminal masterminds, they are not. Prosecutors have alleged that plot was hatched when the au pair, Juliana Peres Magalhães, who was initially charged with murder in the case in October 23, she has since pleaded. That is an incomplete sentence, but that's okay. That's okay. You got to write these things on the go. It's fine. She has since pleaded guilty to a lesser count of involuntary manslaughter for fatally shooting Joseph Ryan, one of the victims. The au pair agreed to cooperate with prosecutors against Banfield in exchange for a recommendation that she be sentenced to time served according to the plea agreement. Of course, the court does not have to abide by the plea agreement. Banfield has pleaded not guilty to charges of aggravated murder for the deaths of his wife, Christine Banfield, and Ryan, as well as using a firearm during the commission of a felony. He faces up to life in prison if convicted on the murder charges. Prosecutors say Brendan Banfield and the Virginia family's Brazilian au pair were having an extramarital affair and carried out the plan together because Banfield wanted to, quote, get rid, close quote, of his wife. The salacious plot features allegations of BDSM sexual role play, trips to the gun range, and false 911 calls, all in an attempt to kill Banfield's wife and frame Ryan, according to prosecutors. Banfield's defense attorney countered that law enforcement manipulated evidence to pin the blame on his client. And I don't blame the defense for mounting a defense. That's perfectly fine. In fact, did you guys see that Alan Jackson, defense attorney to the stars, was on Billy Bush's Hot Mics podcast yesterday? And he made the point that he feels that it is his job to make sure that prosecutors and that police, that law enforcement get absolutely everything right. That's his job. And if they didn't get absolutely everything right, then they can't win. Is basically, I'm putting words in his mouth, right? If they did everything right, then it's perfectly reasonable for them to get a conviction, but they have to get it 100% right. And that was his perspective anyway. So I don't mind defense attorneys mounting a defense, even if I'm sure that law enforcement doesn't appreciate it. But even if they're pointing the finger at law enforcement saying, no, you guys, wrong button. This is the button. You guys manipulated evidence and you put a frame around my client, right? In her opening statement Tuesday morning, prosecutor Jenna Sands told the jury Ryan had been lured to the Banfields' home for what he thought was a consensual sexual encounter with Christine Banfield. Brendan Banfield spent a month posing as his wife on a fetish website, cultivating a relationship with Ryan, who thought he was talking to Christine Banfield about her stranger, we're going to not say that word, fantasy, Sands told the jury. Those two individuals had no reason to know each other, but for the plotting and planning of Brendan Banfield, Sands said. And this, guys, this is the thing that just gets me with this case, is that in order to off his wife, he was willing to off a stranger. However he justified that in his mind is cuckoo. Cuckoo. How do you justify? First of all, how do you justify in your mind? I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your comments on this. How does one justify in their mind the offing of a spouse? Dude, if you're unhappy at home, there are remedies that do not include the ending of one's life. I don't get how people get there. I don't get how people get there. But to just add just a sprinkle on a little more evil seasoning, yeah, we're just gonna kill a stranger while we're at it. Cuckoo. Nuts. Okay, so I'm gonna stop reading this one because in the next one we get to maybe a little more detail. Okay, so join me again back over here on Acrobat. Just let's see. We're gonna scroll up, scroll. Yeah, they heard the 911 calls today. Why are we not? Oh, because it's the top. Let me get to the bottom here. Okay. So actually, they didn't talk about the 911 call. So let me read the 911 call thing real quick. Where are we? Okay, jurors hear 911 calls. The case began February 24th, 2023. Calls to 911 led police to the Banfields' Herndon, Virginia home where they found Christine Banfield, 37, dead of stab wounds, and Ryan, 39, dead of gunshot wounds nearby. I know that this is a bit off topic, but 37 and 39, does that remind you of anybody? Isn't that was the age of the Teppies, right? Spencer and Monique Teppie. Spencer was 37, Monique was 39. Doesn't matter. Tuesday morning, jurors heard the 911 calls made from the Banfields' home. One 911 recording made at 7:47 a.m. was disconnected after a dispatcher answered the call. A dispatcher then called the number back and left a message when no one picked up. Prosecutors have said Peres Magalhães called 911 at that point, but at Banfield's direction, hung up before saying anything. At 8:02, Peres Magalhães, this is again Juliana Peres Magalhães, called 911 again. So what was that? At 15 minutes later, called 911 again and spoke to a dispatcher, stuttering, but eventually telling them her friend had been stabbed. Quote, "I need help, my friend. She's been stabbed with a knife, and now she's bleeding a lot. I don't know what to do anymore," Peres Magalhães could be heard saying. After attempting to relay the home address to the dispatcher, but stuttering and gasping for breath, Banfield took the phone from Peres Magalhães. He gave his name and identified himself as a federal agent. That's right. Mr. Banfield is a federal agent working for the IRS. It's not appropriate to joke about that, right? We'll stop. Okay, Banfield then said, stuttering at times on the recording, "There's somebody here. I shot him, but he stabbed her. She's bleeding. She's got several marks on her neck. What do I do?" Peres Magalhães pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in October 2024. Court records showed a plea hearing. Prosecutors read aloud a statement laying out the key allegations in the case. As they alleged, Peres Magalhães began working as an au pair for the couple in late 2021, and in August 22, she and Brendan Banfield began an extramarital relationship. Banfield told his then 22-year-old lover his wife was a terrible mother and he wanted to get rid of her, Sands said in court. The murder plot was set in motion because for Banfield, divorce wasn't an option. He didn't want to share custody of the couple's toddler. That is why? That you just don't want to share custody? So let's kill her. Whoo. Cuckoo. Banfield set up an account on FetLife.com, a sexual fetish site, began communicating with Ryan and lured him to the Banfield home, prosecutors say. Ryan likely believed he was meeting Christine Banfield for a consensual sexual encounter, according to prosecutors. Banfield, posing as his wife, gave Ryan strict instructions. Quote, "The door will be unlocked. Christine will be asleep in bed. Come straight upstairs, cut off clothing, tie her, R-word her. Simple and fun." That was how it was posed, Sands said in court. They would not meet in person beforehand. Joe's phones would be left in a car. Joe was to bring a knife, zip ties, chains, and most importantly, he was not to stop, even if she looked terrible, even if she was calling for help. He was to follow through because that's what she really wanted. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's now go over to this one. I want to, let me just, oh, it is, there we go. Okay. Okay, so this was like a live update of the trial, what was happening during the day. I don't know that I can get any closer. Yeah, okay. So video shows au pair's account of Herndon killings. The au pair accused in a love triangle that led to the alleged double murder shared a dark and twisted story about what she says led up to the killings. During an interview with prosecutors, Juliana Peres Magalhães said Brendan Banfield, the man with whom she was having an affair, masterminded an elaborate plot to kill his wife, Christine. She said she moved from Brazil to the U.S. on a work visa in October 2021 to work as an au pair for the Banfields, helping with their young daughter. She told prosecutors she and Brendan started having an affair about a year into her job while she was living in their Herndon home. Let's see. Okay, the prosecutor's opening statement says, "The man seated behind me killed his wife." This is Sands. Banfield's double murder trial began with lead prosecutor Jenna Sands' dramatic opening statement. "We're here today because Brendan Banfield, the man seated behind me, killed his wife, Christine Banfield, and another man named Joseph Ryan. Those two individuals had no reason to know each other, but for the plotting and planning of Brendan Banfield," Sands said. And I keep harping on this, but that is a new level of evil, man. Christine Banfield, a 37-year-old ICU nurse and the mother of a 4-year-old, was asleep early on the morning of a day off after prosecutors say her husband posed as her on a fetish website and arranged for a stranger to enter the home and R-word her. Brendan Banfield then plotted to kill his wife and pin it on that man. Joseph Ryan, Sands said. Sands laid out what jurors would hear, including testimony from the family's au pair, accounts from witnesses and experts, the fetish website chats, phone call details, and 911 calls. Before we continue, let me just here. I'm going to bring up. I should have a graphic of both victims here. I will do that for the next time we cover this case. Let me just go over to what you guys are saying here real quick. Let me go. Oh, yeah, you guys are checking in from everywhere. Let's just see real quick. North Carolina, South Carolina, California, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Ohio, Findlay, Ohio. Cool. UK. I think you're probably the farthest one away. Valencia, Spain, Yorkshire, UK, North Carolina, Lake George, New York, Avalon, Texas. You guys are awesome. And LB Hammer Time just says, just get a divorce, people. Yeah, please do that instead of the murdery. Not cool. Let's see. Mooney says, "I wonder if all of his affairs will be allowed in. The au pair was not his first by a long shot." I don't get it. Guys. You know, I guess for every Jack there is a Jill. In his case, for every Jack there are multiple Jills. But I don't feel like he's a total catch. That That's just me. That's just me. All right, let's bring up Mr. Ryan here. Um, D9072 says, I watched some of the trial, and the way she was found and the manner of her death is monstrous. This man, in my opinion, is evil and selfish. How you get your man is how you lose him, young lady. Terrible. Ooh, that old adage. Yeah, yeah. Um, ooh, good comment. Good comment. Let's see. Oh, look. Hey, Mooney agrees with me. Uh, Not to be rude, but look at him. Why? Not him. Let's see. Why and how he got multiple women is way beyond me. Yeah, I don't get it. Uh, yeah, defense trash Christine's public image too. Yep, and yep, that was the thanks, Melissa. People are cray cray. Uh, Gavin, what time of day did this take place? This took place in the early morning. It was like 7:45. Um, I think he was to arrive at well, it doesn't. It said the first 911 call happened at 7:47 a.m. So it was. Let's call that the early. For me, that's the very early morning. But yeah, the early morning. Uh, Analytical one said, "Gavin, it's not just you. Hubby had a face for radio." uh, yeah, Patricia Burns. How is that au pair not going down for life? She admitted to killing the guy. I don't get it either. I don't get it. I mean, how do you make that deal? It'll just be involuntary manslaughter. Is the theory that he made her do it? She didn't want to do it, but he made her do it. She feared for her life if she didn't participate, something like that. I don't know. Kim's Crazy Life says, Gavin, as she was on the stand telling the story, she showed no emotion. I think she's as guilty as he is. I watched about the last maybe 35 minutes of her testimony today. And you're right. It was, I guess, clinical. It was sterile the way she testified, for sure. I really wish they'd get better sound in that courtroom. You'd think after the Johnny Depp Amber Heard debacle that this courthouse would get really, really good sound, but it was tough to understand her in a lot of the time. Mooney says it's a plea deal. She will get time served if she follows through with what the prosecutors ask of her. She will then be deported. Remember, it's a plea deal with the prosecution, so maybe she will get time served, maybe she won't. Maybe the judge will go, this is not appropriate at all. We're going to add 10 years to it. Maybe. You never know, but possibly. But I think but I do think that you're right. Like if I think she'll probably be deported after that for sure, if she's still on a visa. Patricia Burns says, many years ago, I worked as an au pair and a nanny, and in every job, the husband tried it on with me, and I had to move on to another household every time. Goodness. Yeah, that's pretty sick. Scotch's mom says, hey, I'm late. Glad you're here, though. Jacksonville, Florida. She gets a sweet deal with deportation in exchange for her testimony. It is a sweet deal and not cool, in my opinion. But okay, let's... Yeah, Schmoopy says she said today one shot she did on her own, no direction, just as guilty. Yeah. Buenas de Colombia. Thank you for being here. Glad you're here. Okay, let's move back over to this one. There were a couple of other there were some other witnesses. Um, Officer says Banfield washed blood off hands before police could swab them. On the witness stand, Officer Zach Beckner said Brandon Banfield had blood on his hands and was not handcuffed at any point in police custody. Then it cut off. When asked why Banfield was allowed to wash his hands, Beckner said he felt bad that Banfield was blowing his nose and wiping his face with his hands. Beckner said he was not given instruction or guidance for Banfield to not wash his hands. I was trying to be empathetic at the time, Beckner said. Beckner, I hope this was a learning opportunity for you, for crying out loud. Protect the scene, man. Protect the scene. Okay, then the defense. Au pair was arrested to flip her against Banfield. What? That might be true. But does it help their case? Banfield's attorney John Carroll argued in his opening statement that state prosecutors repeatedly brought plea officers to the au pair, including one that would have brought her charge down to a misdemeanor in the months after her arrest. Quote, the whole reason she was arrested was to flip her against my client, Carroll argued. Or maybe she was arrested because she participated in the murder of two people. And then in order to get really the guy that was the most culpable in jail for the rest of his life, they offered the plea. I'm hoping that the jury is thinking in those terms. Carroll said, Peres Magalhães wrote to Banfield, they want you. All they want is to get me in this case. They want you. All they want is to get me in this case. They want me to say things that aren't true. They want me to say things that aren't true. They want me to say things that I did that aren't true. They offered me a misdemeanor. Well, they wrote in prison, in jail, I guess. They wrote. Again, an indication that these are not the sharpest tools in the shed. At one point, Peres Magalhães declined a plea deal from prosecutors that would have brought charges against her down to a misdemeanor, Carroll said. As the case went on, it became clear prosecutors were willing to do anything, he said. Court resumed after lunch. A forensic pathologist testified on victims' autopsies. Kessler spoke about specific details on samples collected from both victims during autopsies. She also testified on the gunshot wounds suffered by Ryan and about the stab wounds on Christine, saying her wounds were all rapidly fatal injuries. Christine also had abrasions and contusions, Kessler said. So there was this rapid, what did Tom Brennan call it? I can't remember the term that he used, but basically that it was a blitz. Like she was blitz. She was blitzed. It was a blitz attack. Knife shown in court as medical examiner testifies on Christine Banfield's fatal injuries. Court officer showed a knife from evidence. As Kessler described Christine Banfield's deadly injuries, she listed wounds including to the jugular vein in her neck and said she had rapidly fatal injuries. Her cause of death was multiple sharp force injuries, and the manner of death is homicide, Kessler said. And a break. I do like this timeline. Yeah, that's... Police discover the au pair has moved into the primary bedroom with Brendan Banfield, and his daughter is calling her mommy. Oh, are you kidding me? Okay, so February 24th, 2023 is the murder date. The au pair was arrested. Oh no, and then October 13th is when they discovered that the au pair has moved into the master bedroom. The daughter is calling her mommy on the 19th. She's arrested, charged second-degree murder and a firearms offense related to Ryan's death. On the 16th of September 2024, almost a year later, Brendan is charged 4 counts of aggravated murder and a firearms charge tied to both deaths. And then a plea deal and confession was last October. Magalhaes pleaded guilty to manslaughter, agrees to cooperate with authorities, and then, wow. Okay. All right. Banfield's, let's see. Go up here. Au pair takes the stand. That had to be uncomfortable walking right by him. Had to be uncomfortable. Okay, became sexual. Au pair testifies on relationship with Brendan Banfield. Peres Magalhães took the stand and answered questions on the start of her time with the Banfields after arriving in October 21. She received $200 per week, she said. She and Banfield had a little relationship at first, she said. $200 a week. I would imagine plus room and board or something like that. That's wow. We barely spoke, like my relationship was mostly with Christine and the couple's young child. Peres Magalhães testified. Then it became sexual, physical relationship, she said. The prosecutor then began to show photos and videos of the two together. Au pair testifies that Brendan wanted to get rid of his wife. Peres Magalhães described seeing Brendan Banfield make a profile on a fetish website in his wife's name using photos of her. He created a new email address and used his wife's laptop, she said, to make the profile on FetLife, which describes itself as the world's largest BDSM kink and fetish community. Using the name Anastasia, Brendan Banfield messaged men about gagging and spanking, Peres Magalhães said. A prosecutor described a number of photos posted to the FetLife profile. Brendan was careful to never post to the account except when Christine Banfield was home, out of concern for where her phone would ping during an investigation, Peres Magalhães said. Wow, I mean, that's pretty elaborate, man. Pretty elaborate. Au pair says divorce wasn't an option. When asked by the prosecution whether Brendan ever talked about divorcing Christine, Juliana replied, no, he basically said divorce was not an option. She said Brendan told her he didn't want a divorce because money was involved and he didn't want to share custody of their daughter with Christine. Magalhaes said Brendan first mentioned his plan to get rid of her in October 2022, about 2 months after they started having an affair. She said he brought up the plan while the two of them were on a trip to New York with the Banfield's young daughter. Initially, he didn't really know what he would do, she said on the stand. He just mentioned that he was thinking about it and he would think better and let me know what he thought about it. Dude, this is the moment you run away, young lady. Run far, far away. That is a crime. What he is doing there is called conspiracy. I think. I'm not a lawyer. Look it up. I'm not a lawyer. She said she at first thought he was joking, but he spoke more of his plans when they returned from their trip. Brendan and Au pair declined to meet with several people on FetLife, she testified. Brendan and Juliana messaged with several people. Oh, she participated on FetLife as they posed as Christine, but rejected them because site users wanted to meet in person before any sexual encounter. Brendan believed Joseph Ryan would come to the Banfields' home and enact the violent fantasy he'd planned. He made Brendan feel confident enough that he would be the person to play the role, which means being aggressive and hold her down and come over to the house and bring stuff and all that. She said, wow, that is nuts. Oh, Brendan checked for doorbell cameras in the neighborhood. Juliana testified Brendan went around his neighborhood in Herndon checking to see if any of his neighbors had doorbell surveillance cameras in preparation of the killings. He went around in the neighborhood checking for ring cameras, doorbell cameras, the doors, she said. She said Brendan knew that two different neighbors didn't have cameras, but he was checking for other neighbors. The au pair told the prosecution that Brendan also changed his routine so it wouldn't be odd that he was at McDonald's nearby on the morning of the killings. So he started going to leave the house earlier to go to work, and he would stop by somewhere else to eat breakfast or something so it wouldn't be odd. Oh my goodness. And then, yeah, the testimony will continue tomorrow. Let's bring up our victims here one more time, see what you guys are saying. Kim's crazy life. Didn't you hear her say our house, our bed, etc.? Yeah, she was. Yeah, you're right. Did the defendant cry when his paramour spoke today? I don't think so. Carol Silva, please don't think that women from Brazil are like this awful person. I am embarrassed that she is from my country. Horrible. I do not think that. I do not think that in the slightest. Yeah, one person out of a huge country like that. And I feel like Yeah, I feel like this was a young, impressionable woman that was controlled. I kind of feel that way. That doesn't mean that she is not guilty. But yeah. Elizabeth McMaster Esquire, lawyer here. Yes, it's a conspiracy. Thank you. Felt like it. Felt like that. Uh but yeah, Christine lost her life because of these two schmoolios. So did Mr. Ryan. He lost his life because of these two schmoolios. Let's show them again. Mr. Brendan Banfield and Julia Magalhaes, which I think is probably pronounced more like Magalhaes or something like that. I'm not very good with Portuguese. I lived in Argentina, which is a Spanish speaking country. I had friends that were Brazilian down there, and it always seemed unfair that I could speak Spanish and they could understand me. But if they spoke Portuguese, I could not get it. And as you guys know, this is a bit of a tangent. Yeah, it's a bit of a tangent. My wife and I what was it? June? I can't remember when it was. We went to Portugal on just a little vacation to celebrate our anniversary, and which is not in June. Our anniversary is in November, but that's how we justified the trip. Um, yeah, I could completely just speak in Spanish to anyone, and they got it. And then back in Portuguese to me, oh, it was tough. It was tough. So yeah. Anyway, I don't blame Brazil. I don't blame the Brazilian people. I blame this person and this person. That's who I blame. Okay, guys. Now let's. Carol Silva says Spanish is totally different from Portuguese. I can understand, but not the same. Yeah, yeah. But I've got buddies. Like I've got a friend who she lived in Portugal and she came back. This is when we were young. We were in our 20s. We'd hang out, and she could understand everything that I said. Maybe it's that I don't know. I've always thought that Spanish was a more beautiful language, but Carol, I will not impugn your country's wonderful language, but I've always thought that Spanish was a beautiful language. I'll just leave it at that. All right, let's get into three questions, shall we?
It's three questions with Gavin Fish.
Pow! Okay, in this segment, guys, I will answer three questions posed by you, and I solemnly promise that I will answer to the best of my ability. I do not really prepare my answers on these. All I do is copy and paste the questions into my system here, so I haven't really thought about these. You can send in questions. I got a lot of questions yesterday, which was terrific. But you can send in questions to 3questions@gavinfish.com, 3questions@gavinfish.com, spell it out, THREE questions@gavinfish.com. And I will endeavor to answer all of them in the order in which they are received, and I will do so three at a time. So, what is question number one? Let me bring it up. Question number one is, it's a long one. Let's see. If you were stranded, it's kind of showing weird. There we go. If you were stranded in a supermarket, big grocery store overnight because you got locked in accidentally and there was no way to call out or be let out until the morning, what would you do with your time there if there were no consequences? Within reason, you can't trash the place. Let's see. This is the plot to one of my favorite movies with Jennifer Connelly. Jennifer Connelly movies. What was it called? Way back in the day. This would be in the 90s. Ah, yes, Career Opportunities. This was Career Opportunities. Okay, so first off, Jennifer Connelly was my young teenage crush. That was a beautiful girl and is a beautiful woman who appears to me anyway to be a wonderful and delightful person. But yes, Career Opportunities was one that I watched in the theater something like 9 times. Once it got to Birdcage, when it was the dollar movie, I watched it in the regular theaters. Then it went over to Sunrise Mall, where it was like $3.75. Then it was over at Birdcage, where it was like $1. And me and my buddy Hayden, we watched it way, way, way too many times. You know what I just did? I did. It was a tangent. Okay. Anyway, what would I do? First of all, I worked as a supermarket stock boy, so I know that those places are not empty all night long. But let's just say for the sake of this question, what would I do? I would probably like play video games. I might get into like the candy bins. Like I'm putting myself as a teenager here, not as a 50-year-old grown man, but as a teenager. If I was locked in like the Rayleighs, uh all night long. Well, let's see. They wouldn't have video games at a Rayleigh's, right? If it were a grocery store, I think I'd probably just be eating candy all night long. But if it were like a Target, Walmart, Kmart back in the day, something like a Sears, I think I would be playing video games all night long. I would not trash the place, and I would feel very, very guilty for all of the candy that I consumed throughout the night. But because I was a young teenager in this example, I would be broke and I would run. Okay, question number 2. As a reporter, what has been your most interesting interview? Great question. Um, I don't think I will share names, but there was a suspect. Um, there was a murder suspect here in Western Pennsylvania who later charges of murder dropped. Were dropped, and he was let free. He consequently sued the county and won, and was paid out for him a significant amount of money. It wasn't huge, but a significant amount of money. And he later had all sorts of problems with police. They wanted to get him, and so they caught him with drugs, they caught him with paraphernalia, and then there was an allegation that he had SA'd someone close to him. I believed the allegations, and I learned that there was a warrant that was out for his arrest. So I went to his home, knocked on the door, and uh, he and I and his significant other went to their backyard where we talked for like 2 hours on the record, including I took photographs. And I knew, or at least I felt the entire time, that he was lying to me the entire time. And he did it with just so much ease. He was completely comfortable. He later pleaded guilty to the charge. Yeah, so that might be the most. Oh, no, I've done some interviews where they're all women. I've done some interviews where they talked about being SA'd within the county jail while they were for waiting for court. And in one case, the charges were dropped on this woman, but she had spent like 200 days in prison. It was, yeah. So there are a lot of interesting and sad interviews that I've done. Today was a tough one. I was out in Clarion County today and talked with a guy who was a roadside big rig mechanic. He worked for a company that offers towing service, and like they'll change your tire, they'll make repairs to things on the roadside, to tractor trailers. And I made a short about this earlier today, but in Pennsylvania, as with the entire country, guys, this is my personal crusade here today. If there is a car on the side of the road, the side of the highway, you must move over. Please, I'm begging you, move over. Our son does this job. He works for a corporation that does the same thing. He's a diesel mechanic. He goes out and sometimes does things roadside. Please move over. 36 people were killed last year in 2025 in roadside accidents like this. But anyway, I talked to him where he had been, his life was nearly lost by a driver that did not move over. His back was broken multiple times. His legs were broken. His ankles were broken. He lost his spleen. He lost a kidney. His life is, as he knew it, is completely over. Those are tough interviews to do. Tough. Oh, I interviewed a mom. I interviewed a mom whose son, after being bullied at school, attempted to take his own life with a compound bow and did not succeed, but life is ruined, changed forever. Just a little kid. I've had lots of interesting interviews. If you had 3 wishes and they can only be frivolous, nothing serious like world peace, what can they be? You know what? I'm too self-absorbed to wish for world peace anyway. And I'm a bit of a realist. I know that human nature never changes. So I wouldn't waste my wish on that. My wish, was it just yesterday or a couple days ago? There was a question about if you could go back to a certain time in your life, a certain memory, would you do that? Or which one would you choose? I think those would be my wishes. Maybe my wish would be to be able to travel to any time in my past to visit invisibly. And maybe it's just because I'm so sentimental and nostalgic these days, but I would love to be able to, and maybe, I don't want to, I like where I ended up. I'm really happy with where I ended up, but there are a couple things where I just want to like grab myself and slap myself just a little bit, just a little like whack, 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 wake up. Maybe that would be a wish. I would wish that my grandmother never had cancer. She died while I was away and couldn't get back. I was in Argentina. I would wish that my dad never had cancer. Yeah, those would probably be my wishes. Those are good questions. And the reason I do this segment before we get into headlines is because I want to know what your answers to some of these questions are. So please, in the comments, tell me if you had 3 wishes, what would they be? What is the most interesting conversation you've ever had with someone? Another interesting interview I did before my maternal grandmother passed away. At a ripe old age, she was almost 92. I sat down for like 2 hours with cameras and I mic'd her up and I talked to her about her life. And I love that I have that video with my grandma. Or it's not with, it's of my grandma. It's only her talking about her life. And that was a super interesting interview. And then the third one was, if you're stranded in a supermarket grocery store overnight, what would you do? And while you're writing those down in the live stream, in the live comments, we shall move on to headlines.
True crime headlines.
Ow. Okay, true crime headlines. Where am I going? I'm going to push this button. This article, it's pretty tabloidy. Rob Shooter is kind of a tabloid journalist, in my opinion. It's not sourced. He has unnamed sources, but I still thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd just bring it. The headline is Nick Reiner thinks he'll be home for late dad's birthday, March 6th. Nick Reiner, accused of killing his parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner, is reportedly living in a bubble of delusion behind bars. He really thinks he'll be out in time for his dad's birthday. A close source tells me he doesn't seem to comprehend why he's locked up at all. Those who knew him say he's disconnected from reality. It's like talking to someone who exists in a completely separate world. The mental health news is deeply concerning. His schizophrenic disorder, this is a quote, meds were changed about a month before the murders, a source reveals. It threw him into a fast downward spiral. He became unpredictable, erratic, and even scary to the public, to the people who cared about him most. Another source adds, he's still struggling with his treatment. Nothing seems to stabilize him, and reaching him is nearly impossible. Makes me wonder how many people are visiting him in jail or through the telephone or video system. But anyway, it's not surprising to me if this is true. That interview with Alan Jackson, he doubled down on the whole, on Billy Bush's podcast, on what he said at his press conference, that according to the laws of the state of California, which is a huge caveat, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. That's what he said. And he's like, and I read that say, okay, so he's cuckoo. He's gone, right? Mentally checked out. Okay. Do you guys remember the Caitlin Tracy murder? Let me bring up Caitlin Tracy. Remember this? We covered this. He was in Michigan. He needed to be extradited. He had all sorts of problems. This dude, Adam Backerink. He's a problem, man. He is a problem. Anyway, attorney charged with murdering wife Caitlin Tracy in South Loop high rise. He is in Chicago, and he is now charged with Tracy's murder. A man accused of murdering his wife at a South Loop high rise is back in Chicago and appeared in court today. Tuesday morning, Chicago PD announced charges against Adam Backerink in Caitlin Tracy's murder. Tracy's parents and their attorney arrived at the Cook County Courthouse Tuesday ahead of Backerink's court appearance. She was found dead at the bottom of a stairwell in his South Loop condo building in October of 2024. He's been charged with one count of first-degree murder and one count of murder, strong probability death, injure, issuance of a warrant, whatever that means. Chopper 7 showed Chicago police detectives walking Backerink into the station at Belmont and Western. He was extradited from Michigan, where he served a sentence for domestic violence against Tracy. So that is moving on. And lastly, this is an article from a couple of weeks ago, but I thought that I'd bring it back up because her next court date is coming up. We believe it is. This is Laken Snelling, the University of Kentucky cheerleader or stunt team member who is accused of killing her own newborn baby. That is her on the left. But anyway, a date has been set for a grand jury to hear evidence in the Laken Snelling case and determine whether or not to indict the former small-town beauty queen and University of Kentucky cheerleader. The 22-year-old is accused of giving birth in the bedroom of her off-campus residence in Lexington and then putting the baby in a trash bag that she hid inside her closet. She waived her right to a preliminary hearing back in September, thus sending her case to a grand jury. Preliminary hearing, a judge would have determined whether or not there was probable cause. There have been few updates in the case since that time, but a subpoena filed in the case and obtained by People reveals that a grand jury will hear evidence in the case in late January. So that is the update on Laken Snelling. I'm conflicted on this one emotionally, I would say. I think that she is, if she did what they say she did, I think that she's guilty. But I also think that there's some mental issue there, mental health issue there. So I'm conflicted in my heart on that one. Those guys are your headlines.
True crime headlines.
Pow. Okay, getting to your comments. What do we say? Just Ducky, grocery store. I'd play with the intercom system or run around in my socks sliding around on the floor. That sounds like a good time. Uh, but have you ever seen the movie The Birdcage? Hysterical. Yeah. Well, why is that? That is, yeah, Robin Williams. I I don't think that I've actually ever seen Birdcage. Nathan Lane. It's a classic. No, I haven't seen it. Uh, Promise J. Rhodes. Oh, little sneezy poo there. Uh, Gavin, like, oh no, Promise J. Road says, my husband is Mexican. When we first dated, he would whisper Spanish in my ear, being sweet and silly. When I asked what he was saying, it would always be an ad or something. Like massive savings this weekend at your local supermarket. Es de sábado. Supermercado, Sao te trae. Yeah. I remember those being blared on loudspeakers in cars driving through the little barrios and stuff when I was living in Argentina. It was so fun. That is funny. I why did I never think of that? Thank you for giving me a great idea. That is so funny. Uh, Autumn says my father was supposed to go to that hearing today. He does towing for police. Yeah, there were tons of tow companies that were there. That's a it's a oh, that was tough. Um, I'm sorry your dad fell on ice. That sucks. Jenny says in New York State, it is illegal to not move over. Move over or get pulled over. Try to get legislation passed in your state. Yeah, in Pennsylvania, it's illegal as well. We should always be moving over, like, just always do that. Our son, I've been really grateful for his wisdom in his youth. He sometimes will go out to calls where he's just like, I don't feel safe here. And so he'll call the Pennsylvania State Police, who, to their credit, and I'm so thankful to them, will send personnel out there that will get a cruiser to put on lights, set up flares, and actually move traffic over. And I'm glad that he does that when he's feeling unsafe. Autumn Doyle says, my 3 wishes to be financially free and my kids to be happy and healthy. Well, you are a much better person than I am, Autumn. Mooney says, you need to read The Midnight Library. It's about going back in time and seeing what other choices could lead to, written by Matt Haig. Yeah, I'm not unhappy with where my life ended up. And here's the thing, okay? Listen, I don't read nonfiction, or I'm sorry, I don't read fiction all that often. I currently am, like, for 2026, I set a goal to read 6 novels, and they're all classics. They're Huck Finn, A Tale of Two Cities, Fahrenheit 451, a couple of others. And right now I'm doing Tale of Two Cities. I read a lot of nonfiction. I'm an avid reader, but it's mostly biographies and histories that I like to read. But The Midnight Library, going back in time and seeing what other choices could lead to. Did you guys? There was that movie with Nicolas Cage where he got a glimpse of what life would be if he had a family. I don't know that I want that glimpse. I don't want the glimpse. Mooney says, I usually don't read too much fiction, but this book was great. Well, thank you for the book or suggestion. Maybe I'll add that to my list. All right. Hey, thanks guys for sticking around to the end. I'm not sure if we're probably going to check in on this case every couple of days, because it's just egregious in the chutzpah that was, and the planning. It's just egregious. So we will continue on this one. I did want to point out that y'all can head over to my old website, gavinfish.com. If you ever want to get in touch with me, click on this little icon up here. I want to show you, first of all, there's always new articles, true crime articles, published to the front page of my website that will take you over to Crime Cod, my true crime news website. Also, I do occasionally write a blog post, and I wrote one yesterday about a case that I am tangentially kind of connected to, at least I'm interested in. So if you like to read what I write, have at it over there. But most importantly, if you click on this little fishy icon, that will take you over to the fish tank where we hang out on Facebook. You're always welcome to join us. Huge shout out to all of you for your support. Thank you for watching, liking, subscribing. Thank you for your patronage over on Patreon. Thank you very much for YouTube memberships, for buying swag. You guys are the best. Thanks for taking care of me. And with that, I shall bid you adieu until tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel. Until then, take care of yourselves. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.